Target will no longer price match its competitors. So even if you find an identical product for less on Amazon or Walmart, it will no longer match that price.
Guys, y'all ain't gonna believe this freaking crap. Me and my husband just left the grocery store, walked there with not even 4 bags, and paid over almost $300 and something. Everything has just went up double.
What if the one chain that stood strong just gave in? Target, long considered the final fortress against runaway grocery inflation, has now doubled prices on 5 of the most common food items Americans buy every week. We're not talking about steak or sushi. We're talking about shrimp and sauce, ground beef, tomatoes, coffee, and strawberries. All up to 90 to 100% higher than last year. Why? Because 2025 isn't just about inflation anymore, it's about tariffs. Brutal ones, pushed through this spring, hitting imports from Canada, Mexico, Brazil, and the EU, and Target, once known for shielding shoppers, is no longer eating the cost. When even Target folds, it's not just business, it's survival. So which 5 foods are now quietly draining your wallet? Stay with us, because if you're buying any of these at Target, you're already paying double. Number 1. Sauced shrimp. Frozen shrimp with sauce is one of the best-selling items in Target's frozen food aisle. The pre-marinated packs, ranging from 300 to 500 grams, have long been a go-to for families wanting convenient, protein-rich meals that didn't break the bank. But in Q2 2025, the average price of this product line at Target shot up, from around $4.98 to more than $9.89 depending on the brand and flavor. A spike that left consumers with nothing to do but stare. No special promotions, no more buy 2, get 1 free combos like before. This new price isn't the result of better packaging or upgraded quality. It comes from one blunt reality. Target has officially stopped standing on the side of the consumer. Not long ago, Target confirmed it would drop its price match policy, ending its commitment to adjust prices if the same product was cheaper elsewhere. This had once been a shield helping Target's loyal customers feel protected from the wild swings of the retail market. But now, with Target declaring it can no longer absorb cost pressures, every layer of trust has been peeled away. The root cause: tariffs. Frozen shrimp sold in the US mostly comes from Southeast Asian countries like Vietnam and Thailand. Under tariff policies reinstated by the Trump administration in Q1 2025, duties on processed seafood from these countries have surged to a staggering 45 to 76%. Instead of holding the line like before, Target is now passing the entire cost directly onto consumers. For many Americans, this isn't just about a few extra dollars. It's a symbol of a quiet upheaval, when foods once tied to care and small weekend joys suddenly turn into luxury items. Shrimp. The dish many families use to break up the week, the meal favored by seniors, dieters, or single moms for its convenience and nutrition, has now become a test of the wallet. More and more people stand frozen at the aisle, then quietly walk away. Not because they don't like it, but because they have to choose indulge themselves or save a few dollars for tomorrow. That feeling doesn't come from the market, it comes from policy. Now, the fact you can still eat shrimp isn't because it's affordable, it's because you've accepted being taxed for the simple act of living. And Target, the store once seen as the price stabilizer for America's middle class, has officially stepped back from that role. Number 2. Ground beef. Perhaps no food is more intertwined with America's culinary identity than ground beef. Every day, millions of American families use it to make burgers, tacos, spaghetti meatballs, and dozens of other dishes. It's the base ingredient for meals that are quick but still filling. It's the familiar staple in kids' lunchboxes, students' dinners, and even those weekend BBQs. But by July 2025, this once essential food had consumers reeling. According to retail data, on some days the price of ground beef at Target spiked from $4.59 to nearly $8.80 per pound, almost doubling in just 6 months. This isn't about a few cents anymore. For the first time since the 2020 pandemic, shoppers are being forced to calculate every ounce of meat as they step into the store. Canada, the second largest beef supplier to the US, has been hit with tariffs of up to 35% since the start of the year under the Domestic Product Priority Policy. US slaughterhouses and processors, meanwhile, face rising labor costs, worker shortages, and a slew of new food safety regulations. The result? The beef supply chain is now bent to a breaking point, not cheap enough to hold prices steady, not stable enough to distribute evenly. And Target, once willing to absorb costs to keep customer loyalty, has finally thrown in the towel, shifting the entire price burden onto shoppers. Here's the thing. Americans can't quit beef. They just eat less of it. Switch to pre-seasoned frozen versions instead of fresh ground, or shrink portion sizes just to hold onto the feeling of eating meat. Some families buy mini burgers. Others saute half a pound of beef with vegetables instead of serving a full meat entree. Many families don't say a word. They just cut a burger in half and split it between 2 kids. Not because they are being frugal, but because they have no other choice. From an everyday staple ground, beef has now become a marker of a society quietly tightening its belt. And in that silence is a bitter realization. Americans are being forced to let go of habits they once took pride in. A country that once ate hamburgers as a symbol of democracy is now measuring out every ounce of meat in the supermarket. All because of tariff decisions made without solutions. The question is, if even beef has become a luxury, what's left for everyone? Number 3, tomatoes. In supermarkets, tomatoes are always stacked next to the vegetables. But in reality, they're not just another piece of fresh produce. They're the raw foundation of America's entire processed food industry. And when fresh tomato prices nearly doubled in the first half of 2025, everything connected to them rose right along, with no ceiling in sight. At Target, fresh tomato prices climbed from $1.79 to between $3.49 and $4.29 per pound, depending on the region. But what shocked consumers even more were the knock-on effects: ketchup prices up 28%, canned tomatoes up 42%, tomato juice up 31%, and even tomato-based canned soups were no longer under $2 a can. One single ingredient spiked, and the whole convenience food system toppled. The starting point isn't new tariffs. The US once imported over 70% of its fresh tomatoes from Mexico. But after the Trump administration reimposed a 28% tariff on Mexican produce in early 2025, chains like Target were forced to cut back imports, shift to domestic sources with higher costs and less stable supply. The fallout didn't stop in the produce aisle. It rippled across the entire packaged food industry, which relies on cheap inputs to keep prices down. And the ones left paying, once again, are the consumers. When Americans cut back on tomatoes, they're not just skipping a slice in their sandwich. They're forced to give up familiar spaghetti nights, think twice before grabbing pasta sauce, skip frozen pizzas, and even pass by those Campbell's tomato soups that once saved them on broke, rainy days. Because now every product tied to tomatoes adds another weight to the grocery bill. The feeling isn't anger anymore. It's a bare, unshakable helplessness. The realization that you're paying more not to splurge, but just to hold on to a normal meal. And when even those normal things are stripped away by tariffs and inflation, Americans' sense of control over their own lives begins to wobble. Tomatoes are no longer the easy fruit. They've become the litmus test, showing that if you can't afford a basic ingredient, then Americans have truly lost their freedom to choose from their own shelves. Number 4, coffee. Nothing fancy, a home-brewed drip pot, a bag of budget ground coffee from Target, a splash of cream, sometimes just water. The one thing that stayed the same in a life changing too fast. But in 2025, even that stopped standing still. At Target, the price of a basic bag of ground coffee has blown past $12, compared to just $6 to $7 last year. Familiar brands like Archer Farms, Good & Gather, and even those no-name bulk bags seniors used to buy by the case are now up 80 to 95% depending on the type. No one thought the simplest thing would climb so high. No one said anything when they saw the shelf tag. They just bought a smaller bag next time, or didn't buy at all. Don't think of coffee as just a drink. For many older Americans, it's the one thing tethering them to a normal routine. It's how they start their mornings without pills. It's the habit that keeps them connected to life when everything else is slipping out of reach. But now that habit is being taxed. Exactly that. Coffee beans from Brazil, Colombia, and Africa, which supply more than 70% of the coffee Target sells, were hit with new tariffs of 35% to 60% starting in early 2025 under a food trade adjustment policy. Target once had huge imports locked in by long-term contracts, but By Q2, even this chain had to give up trying to hold prices. Not because they wanted to, because they couldn't. And that pushed millions of Americans, people who used to think at least my morning coffee is still cheap, into a bitter truth. Nothing is immune to tariffs and inflation, not even the thing that keeps you awake. Now, coffee isn't a choice, it's a test. How much of your life can you cut away and still call it living? Number 5, strawberries. $7 for a box of strawberries. Not organic, not some premium import, just regular fresh strawberries. The kind that Target used to sell year-round for $2.99. Now that price is history. By mid-July 2025, strawberry prices had nearly doubled at most Target stores across the Midwest and Northeast. The organic kind tops $8. Even the regular packs don't go for less than $6.29. And Target no longer has price matching. No more buy 2, get 1 free. You either accept the new price, or you leave it out of your cart. But the problem isn't the berries, the problem is choice. Strawberries are one of the few fruits kids will actually eat. They're a no-cook staple for older adults. They're safe for people with diabetes. They're the one thing a home cook could put on the table without asking the budget for permission. And now, they're taxed, marked up, and quietly erased from the daily options of millions of Americans. The reason? Nothing new. Import tariffs from Mexico and Canada, rising transport costs out of California, and Target slashing long-term contracts under profit pressure. The government says it wants people to eat healthy, but every current policy pushes them toward canned goods, cheap carbs, refined sugar. The things that don't make anyone healthier just make retail chains sell more. You can cut out cake, you can cut out soda, but when strawberries become too expensive to buy, it's no longer just cutting costs. It's losing the ability to care for the people you love. All because of a few lines in a tariff policy, when shrimp, beef, tomatoes, coffee, and strawberries. The simplest foods you could think of have all nearly doubled in price. The issue is no longer about expensive or cheap. It's the moment Americans have to ask, what do we even control in our own shopping carts anymore? Prices climb, tariffs tighten, choices shrink, and in that storm, consumers are the ones carrying all the weight. You can accept it. Or you can start asking the question, why do national protection policies make the very meals of ordinary people so fragile? Share this video if you feel you're not the only one thinking this. And don't forget, prices might be set by someone else, but staying awake, that will always be your right.
This video does not promote division within the United States or encourage segregation. All content is presented for the purpose of exploration, analysis, and fostering discussion based on current events, public sentiment, and social trends. We fully respect the United States Constitution and all federal regulations. If today's analysis made you think, drop a comment so we can keep the conversations going. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you will never miss our next independent deep dive.